Alrighty everyone, welcome back. Today is a special day given that it is May the 4th. Happy Star Wars Day everybody out there. I hope you're all having an amazing week, by the way, so far as we approach the weekend. There's a lot of things going on with Bob Iger and his approach, his new strategy for enhancing the overall Star Wars franchise and where it's really all heading and exactly how fans are really going to be able to invest themselves in a brand new take on the Star Wars franchise. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the overall subject about what's going on with Bob Iger and his strategy towards shifting around the timeline of the Skywalker saga and essentially resetting all things Star Wars when it comes to the Disney canon. So we know that everything is happening all at once simultaneously between Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, really trying to focus things on, such as, for example, reviving Star Wars Legends and how they are going to go about doing this, and what Bob Iger had to elaborate on with that. So let's get right into this. Now, with Disney CEO Bob Iger actively keeping fans posted about the future of Star Wars, he recently went on to reveal more about the plan to reset the Skywalker saga timeline that's being organized by Jon and Dave. Now, Bob Iger went on to state the following. Well, we were discussing this with Mr. Favreau and Filoni on how could we tell the stories that already existed before, the stories that fans like to call Legends or the EU. And we kept noticing that we were having a tough time getting around the obstacles of the already existing sequel lore. So we came to decide on a useful tool that we will be utilizing in one of our upcoming Star Wars shows that allowed us to completely shift around the events of the Skywalker saga and the entire timeline of Star Wars, and just the entire Star Wars franchise that sort of goes against some elements, but not all, of the sequel canon. We wanted to find this balance, you know, and Jon and Dave are handling that in a specific way carefully. So, one thing, guys, that I think we need to focus on about what Bob Iger's saying here is that it has a lot to do with balancing things out. It's not like they're going to erase the entire sequel trilogy, let's be real about this. But what they are doing is that they are erasing specific meaning or canon of the sequel trilogy movies, so to speak. And a lot of things within the Skywalker saga, the history is going to be shifted around, a lot of which has to do with specific characters that lead up to the sequels, such as Luke, for a great example. Bob Iger also kind of elaborates on that a little bit. We'll get into that in just 1 second here. But what's really exciting about this is that this is the same exact thing that Jon and Dave have been teasing for the past couple of months now, that Mark Hamill even teased a couple of weeks ago also, and how a lot of this is going to be done through Mando Season 4, as well as Ahsoka Season 1, and especially Season 2. And we're going to get into that in just a second, because a lot of this really has to do with Ahsoka Season 2, which, by the way, has not been written yet. It's been in the notes phase and the brainstorming phase by Jon and Dave. So, moving on, alright, we know that Bob Iger is on a mission to really creating his own legacy, to creating his own history of Star Wars, right? To really kind of stamp himself as somebody who turned things around for the Star Wars fandom and the overall community at heart. So, that brings us to the next thing that he brings up, is that this will give them the freedom to introduce popular Legends characters and new tales of Luke that were not possible before we made this call. It's something that we knew going in that we had to be extra careful with, and we are taking every step to ensure that. We had George come in and look over everything of what we are putting together, and he is loving every bit of this. We will be able to comment on all of this a little bit later this year into next year. We figured this was a necessary step to adapt the Legends stories as much as we could. We realize it's endless stories to be told sitting in there like a library. Now, again, Bob Iger really kind of just backtracking what he said a couple of weeks ago that, perhaps, pursuing these Legends stories aren't the best route. Now he's full on supporting this. He is 100% in favor of what Jon and Dave are doing And given that this is a thing that was put together by George, John, and Dave to shift around the Skywalker timeline, it also works in conjunction with what we talked about how a new book is set to arrive in holiday of 2024 called Family Trees. And in those family tree, books, it's going to actually showcase the expansion of the Skywalker family, the Kenobi bloodline, the Palpatine bloodline, and yes, even Rey's. Everything is going to be shifted around here and there and expanded and more accurate towards Star Wars Legends, at least for characters like Luke. Now, separate from what, Iger said here is that this all alludes to how Luke's history will be shifted around with the introduction of Mara Jade that will be a big deal in Mando 4, as well as the Dave Filoni Star Wars movie, which, by the way, is now aimed to release in 2026, if they get things done on time. Some sequel canon is going to be retconned through the World Between Worlds, and it all begins in 2025 with Ahsoka Season 2, which is John and Dave's game plan right now for the entire audience. More of the timeline will be shifted around in the upcoming Dave Filoni film as well. So again, it may come across as a turnoff, the fact that fans have to wait until 2025 for these major changes to even become, valid or to be put into place. And I think that may be one reason why some fans are going to have issues with this at the same exact time. We know that, fans may be led to believe that this may very well lose their interest if they have to wait 2 whole years for Ahsoka Season 2 to really establish this timeline shift. It's going to be teased in the first season, but not really heavily introduced, but it will be very much used in a significant manner in the second season, which, by the way, John and Dave had to take a pause on writing the script for that. They're only brainstorming right now and are in the notes phase. A lot of this has to do with the writer's strike, kind of shifting things around a bit. So overall, there's a lot of things going into this that I think are really going to be very healthy for the community. Number one, you're going to get the legend stories that you always wanted to see in live action. A lot of this is going to be told in the upcoming anthology show, Jedi Knight, which, by the way, is strictly focused on the stories of Luke Skywalker and exactly how that's going to work out. So you have a lot of things happening there. You also have, of course, other things and elements going into Mando Season 4 that's going to deal a lot with that as well. So again, the Dave Filoni movie is also a huge focus to shift around the Skywalker timeline, because that too, it's going to be a post-Return of the Jedi movie that's going to open the gateway to becoming a trilogy. This is basically the new sequel trilogy that we've been talking about for months now, that was actually confirmed over at Celebration, at least for the first film. It is going to be the gateway to 2 more movies by Dave Filoni and John. So overall, this is very interesting about what Bob Iger had to elaborate on and really put forward with and to really introduce to the audience. So I'm really intrigued to hear what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again.